Alright, here we go. So I'm playing against this guy Dkayed Jr. and I was watching him play against another streamer. The streamer that he was playing against was named City Boy Z. City Boy Z was streaming. I was watching his channel, and then Dkayed Jr. was in the comment section, and he basically challenged City Boy Z to a match. They had a back and forth. They both won one match each. And so then I ended up challenging Dkayed Jr. because he was a pretty good player. And this is the result. Now, I've been on an absolute tear, beating pretty much everybody I've played. I've beat so many people in a row that I've honestly lost count of how many wins I actually have in a row. Now, he's playing with some shufflers in his deck. He shuffled some of my cards back. He actually picked some pretty good targets to shuffle back. But I think that the amount of cards that hit my graveyard kind of gets out of hand for him. So he then summons these monsters out right here. Goes into some synchros or exceed summons. And these are some pretty powerful monsters here, if I'm being honest. And then he's able to grab Ash Blossom out of his graveyard and put it in his hand. That's insane. Alright, so his inboard is very powerful. It might not look like anything crazy if you read the effects, but there's some very powerful effects. This card right here, if Madolche cards are shuffled into the main deck, basically he gets a special summon effect. This card right here, if Madolche monsters are special summoned from the grave into the deck, he can basically set a trap. This one can target cards in the graveyard and shuffle them from the graveyard into the deck. So basically he can shuffle Madolche monsters back into his deck to then get like other card effects, right? But sometimes he can target my cards if he wants to. It doesn't matter which graveyard to get his effects off. This card right here acts as protection for these two. Whatever it's pointing to, it acts as protection. So that's the insane thing about this. And then of course he has Ash Blossom. He has a trap that can basically negate, and he can keep setting these traps over and over and over, and you guys are going to see right here. So I activate Sheeran. He is going to activate his card's effect, and then I activate Haviness. He is going to negate that with Ash Blossom. And then I just go ahead and start activating effects right here. So he shuffles back the two monsters with this card right here, and then he's going to negate my Rhino Heart with the Madolche Promenade. And then I just shuffle some cards back right here, and then he shuffled back the last two, so then that way I couldn't get my field spell. I couldn't get access to the field spell, but I wouldn't have been able to get it just yet anyways because I have the tortoise in hand, but he didn't know that. So I go into Baguska. Baguska will prevent him from being able to attack with these. This one here, the like beauty to Baguska is now we're at a stalemate, and this gives me time to buy turns. So he has to clear out my Baguska, or he has to let me get to a position where I can get a better chance at winning. So of course he doesn't want that, so this will force him to move this because he can't actually link summon this up into a stronger monster without removing one of his two bosses back here, and this is his protection for the two bosses. So he would have to move this to this side to link summon with this, or he would have to use one of these two monsters in the back as material, and I know that, so that's why I went into Baguska anyways, because it's the smartest way to force him to come off of something, or he has to sit there and play through the Baguska, which I can do, by the way. So I activate Medora right here, and then he's going to negate my Gravekeeper's trap, and then he sets another Promenade. Then he goes into Codebreaker and attacks over my Baguska, and now his protection for these two monsters is gone. Now this card does have an effect to where basically, as a quick effect, you can detach one material from this card, then target one Madolche monster on the field, and then it'll become unaffected by monster effects. So basically, he makes this card unaffected by my monster effects. So I go ahead and summon, activate my shuffler, send my Perloreno and then my tortoise back into the thing here, and then he activates this and sends the two Rainbow Bridge of Salvations into my graveyard. Back into my deck. I end up just by luck of draw somehow drawing it, and then I just use Gravekeeper's Trap to go ahead and just pitch it straight to my graveyard, and then I just activate it right away, so then that way he can't like negate it or anything like that. So it allows me to draw the Perloreno, and then he's going to negate the Perloreno, which is completely fine by me. I just need it on the field, and then the first thing he does is goes right into my graveyard and gets my Rainbow Bridge, or not Rainbow Bridge, Exchange of Spirit out of my graveyard, which is smart because he needs it out of my graveyard, so then that way he can access his own graveyard because of the Gravekeeper's Trap. So he's actually pretty smart. He knows what he's doing. So he then attaches a card to this as material. He gets his Ghost Bell right here, and then he's going into another big boss monster right here. And of course, I'm going to start milling. I set the crime, activate this to send this card back into his hand right here. Activate some effects and chain block. And then I go into Millennium Eyes Restrict right here, and then into Kaleido Heart. Now, if he activates the Ghost Bell to pretty much stop anything that I'm doing, the way that I'm chain blocking, basically it'll make it to where I can punish his Ghost Bell. So then he summons his Ghost Bell. I activate my Fairy Tale Snow, so then that way I can flip this card face down. And the whole point of me bringing Millennium Eyes Restrict out was to force him to have to enter the battle phase, because if he activates a monster effect, I can basically negate it and steal that monster, and he won't be able to use that effect anymore, and I can target whatever I want. So anything in his grave, I can pretty much target, and it'll become harder and harder and harder each turn to beat this Millennium Eyes Restrict if it gets out of hand. So it forces him to stop trying to make plays and forces him to enter the battle phase and attack with what he has, right? So he crashes into it, which that was the first monster he actually attacked. As you notice, he didn't go for anything else. And then of course he attacks with this, basically losing damage and frustration, and then he goes into the Asa, and then he ends up scooping because I did have a Exchange of Spirit in my graveyard, so his Asa couldn't actually target anything and take it out of my graveyard because of the face-up Gravekeeper's Trap. Super good match right there. Not your typical tier limit, like running somebody over, steamrolling somebody, but it was a very good back and forth match from beginning to end. And Dkayed Jr. was a pretty good player, but as y'all know, I'm better.